Today we are taking a look at an on-site chlorine generation system. I'm going to go over checking the system out once a PM has been completed to make sure that everything is running properly. First thing you want to check is the ORP and the pH. They should be just like any other pool. Your ORP set point is going to be the same range that you're used to, somewhere between 650 to 750 millivolts, depending on CYA levels and indoor outdoor pools. When there is a call for ORP demand, the XPC will send a signal to the AutoPilot digital power supply to call for ORP. Right now there is not a call for ORP, so it is in sleep mode. You'll see that there's several dots scrolling across the screen. You'll want to run a spin touch test to see what your water chemistry is. Your water chemistry, all parameters will be in the same range that you would expect any other pool to be, with the exception that we are testing for the salt parts per million in the water. We want our salt level to be between 2,500 to 3,500. If it drops below 2,500 parts per million, you will get zero chlorine generation. If you go above 3,500, the system will still work just fine. Then you'll want to run a test on your AutoPilot. You simply do that by pressing the menu button twice. It'll bring up an option to test the pool pilot, and you press the select button. It will test the salt content in the water for you. It'll tell you what the temperature reading is, and it will tell you what the voltage and amperage is for the cell. AutoPilot Digital should be set to 0%. When it is set to 0%, it defaults to receiving signal from the XPC. If the customer has raised the percentage, it will run for that percentage of a 24-hour period. 100% means that it will run 24 hours. In the event that the chlorine is not, chlorine residual is not where it needs to be, you can enter the boost mode, which will run it at 100% for 24 hours. Making sure that the cell is not calcified. These cells are see-through. You can see in here, sometimes it helps to have a light. Right. And we can see the fins inside the cell. There's no calcification inside there. If there were, you would see a white calcification build up in between the cells.
Is that a line of calcium right there?
Looks like it on the third cell from the left. Mm-hmm. Once we visually inspected the cell, we want to inspect the screen here. Union should only go hand tight. Anything above that.
¿Esto bueno?
Sí, señor.
Okay, good. ¿Quieres mi here or no?
No.
Okay. Okay.
So we can see on this screen that there's a lot of lint and debris buildup. Okay, so we've got it cleaned out. It doesn't take long. I'm going to put it back together now. Rotate the manifold back into place. And tight, and we're good to turn the system back on. Once we turn the system back on, we're going to wait for a few minutes for all of the lines to flush out. Whenever you are leaving the property, and once you have done any service to the cell, to the XPC, you want to test and make sure that the cell is producing chlorine. You can do that a couple of ways. You can take a sample from a return jet. Sometimes that's more difficult to get a positive residual reading. The way that I like to test for chlorine production from the cell is from the effluent union, which is down here. As water flows up through the manifold, it comes down through the cell, and the effluent union here can be loosened by hand to allow water to leak out. The water that leaks out of here is highly chlorinated because the chlorine is being generated as it passes down. So before I leave the property, I always test. I first place the system in boost mode to ensure that we have 100% production. I loosen this union so that water begins to leak out, and I test the water coming out of there. We should see that the chlorine coming out of the cell is at least 5 parts per million higher than the residual in the pool.